guys, let's talk about OU. We haven't gotten to catch up really since OU. They promoted the offensive coordinators, but then now hired a defensive coordinator. How different could they look next year, or is it trying to be as similar as possible but with different people?
I think the biggest thing defensively, they're going to look the same, I think, for the most part. Now, I do think that they've gotten more talent when you look at the class that they're bringing in, as well as some of the players that they got through the transfer portal. And you bring in a Zach Alley, who's going to be co-defensive coordinator. We'll see if he's actually calling plays. He's a Brent Venables guy, so they're not going to be changing up a whole lot defensively. Offensively, I do think you could see some change. I mean, you have a new quarterback in Jackson Arnold. We've talked a lot about him. What does he look like next season in a Seth Luttrell offense that is air raid versus what they were running last year, which was the spread under Jeff Lebby, and also a totally rebuilt offensive line. I mean, they're having to replace several guys that are going to the NFL draft. I mean, Tyler Guyton is probably going to be a first-round draft pick come April. You also lose Walter Rouse at left tackle, Andrew Rame at center, who just had a really nice Senior Bowl, McCade Matauer at right guard. So really, you're replacing pretty much your entire offensive line next year, and you have a whole new offensive system. So I think that's the side of the ball where you're going to see the biggest difference.
The most interesting thing. Go ahead, Andy.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, the most interesting thing too with the 2024 edition of what Oklahoma will be is when you look at, both sides of the football, whether it be defensive side, which should be one of the better defenses that Oklahoma's put on the field, at least on paper, in the last decade or so. And along with, Jackson Arnold and what he's inheriting in terms of skill position talent, they're an extremely talented football team. It's just, what's that question mark, or how's that question on the offensive line going to be answered? Certainly on the defensive line perspective, and especially with they're stepping into in the SEC, I think everybody around here knows that those two units are going to have to be extremely, extremely good if you want to make that jump into, whatever that elite level is.
Well, and that's what's interesting to me is the bodies that Brent Venables has brought in since he got the job. It definitely looks more like an SEC defensive line than it did before. And the question is, do you guys think that it will play like that initially? Because the body types are there now.
I think it's a huge question mark of what is this freshman class able to do quickly, because they do bring back some experience, and it's huge. Getting back a DJ Terry, Jacob Lacey, two guys that are both going to be playing their 6th year of college football and have played really well for Oklahoma, as well as the other stops that they've been at. But can a David Stone, a 5-star recruit, come in and make an impact year one? I mean, a Danny Okoye, those type of guys, guys that they went out and got in the transfer portal, a Caden Woolard from Miami, Ohio, who was super productive in the MAC. What kind of impact can he make? But it's that freshman class where you name a couple guys, David Stone, Jaden Jackson, Nigel Smith, those guys in particular, can they make an impact in their first year? Because they're losing quite a bit of experience up front and some bigger bodies, but they're also bringing in their most talented defensive line class in 20 plus years. And so can those guys actually make an impact as quickly as possible? Because I think they're going to need some of those guys to be in their rotation.
And certainly like continued development of the PJ Adebores of the world, or Mason Thomas, who it seems like never really got his sophomore season underway because he was battling injury for so many times throughout the year. That really started, I think, flashed to be the type of guy that a lot of people thought he was going to be going into this season. And then, you get guys back as far as like a Trace Ford or somebody like that they need those guys to really take that next step from a developmental standpoint and be contributors when Oklahoma gets into the SEC.
So Jackson Arnold will be playing behind a revamped offensive line. I go back to the Alamo Bowl with him, and there are moments where you're like, I see exactly why everybody's so excited. And then there are moments like, oh God, he's a true freshman. And do you think that experience where he had essentially a spring practice to be the starter and then play a game and then have now this extended period to kind of digest what happened, do you think that's going to help him going forward?
I think we're going to look back at the Alamo Bowl as I don't know about a blessing in disguise, because you certainly never want to see a guy turn the ball over 6 times in his first career start. But at the same time, like you said, Andy, there were certain throws and they probably were throws that didn't even go for scoring drives. I can remember 2 or 3 particularly that you go, whoa, okay, that's something that Oklahoma fans, I think, are probably a little bit more used to with the Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurtses of the world, as and even Caleb to a certain extent. What a spoiled fan base at the quarterback position.
Yes.
But at the time, you are gonna have to probably go through those, low points and turning the ball over. And I think Oklahoma fans just hope that it doesn't come at a certain moment in the Cotton Bowl, or making that first trip down to Baton Rouge, or, over on the plains against Auburn, or wherever, and certainly Missouri, with kind of the rivalry that I think a lot of people have created off the field. So, I think it is going to be a positive to a certain extent, but there are going to be moments throughout 2024 that you go, oh yeah, he is a true freshman.
Love the boys from Sooner Scoop. Absolutely love them. You know what else I love? Game Time. You need a ticket to an event like right now? Is that event Sunday? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. If you download that Game Time app, now my promo code discount not going to help you too much if you're trying to watch the Chiefs and the 49ers play in Vegas on Sunday, because it's a pricey ticket. But how about that Auburn Oklahoma game we were talking about at Jordan-Hare in September? At $20 off for using the code Staples, that'll help you out a little bit. Download the Game Time app. No matter what you're looking for, whether it is a sporting event, a comedy show, a concert. My daughter still wants to go to the Eras Tour. I've got to figure out a way to do it. Game Time may be the play here. In fact, it's probably the only play here. Use that code Staples, $20 off your first purchase. Game Time has tickets for everything. I do enjoy the Oklahoma-Missouri recruiting rivalry, where like the state legislatures are trying to outdo each other in terms of NIL, which may not even matter in a week. But but it is funny how that sort of developed between the two, former Big 12, Big 8 rivals. Speaking of which, now they do go to Columbia. That is a place that many Oklahoma fans are familiar with because of the old conference affiliations. But they're going to Auburn. They're going to Oxford. They're going to Baton Rouge. What's the one that you think excites the fan base the most in terms of trip?
Boy, I've heard a lot of people talk about Oxford making that trip.
I almost kind of wonder, though, is the excitement pertaining to the events in Oxford, does it have more to do with the chicken on a stick and what you get into before kickoff over at the Grove?
Absolutely.
But here's the thing. There's a game in Oxford and a game in Baton Rouge. If you choose between the two based on tailgating, I'm going to tell you, as someone who's been to all of these places, like, you go to Baton Rouge, like, LSU is the best tailgating on earth. There is no competition. Just because they hang chandeliers in their tents in Oxford does not mean that it competes with them roasting entire alligators.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was going to say
I
LSU.
would co-sign with that.
I was going to say, I know for us personally, it's LSU for me. Like,
excited.
And I'm hopeful it's a night game. And you also look at where it's lined up in the schedule, and maybe Oklahoma or LSU's playing for something really important, maybe to get into that 12-team college football playoff at the end of the season. And it's coming off the Alabama game. That one to me is the one that I've circled as I've heard the atmosphere is just unbelievable. I do think, though, a lot of OU fans are going to make the trip to Oxford. At least I've heard quite a few say that. Auburn as well. I haven't heard a ton. Columbia, Missouri yet, just because I think a lot of fans have probably been there before.
They know it. Yeah, they've been there.
But I would say
they got some
LSU,
rocks. There's an M.
Yeah.
And it's not a place that I think that the last time that Oklahoma was up there was not was it the Landry Jones game when they turned the ball over
and lost.
They ran back the opening kickoff.
I was at that. I believe I was at the 2010 game when they lost as the number one team in the country. And in Missouri, everybody stormed the field. That was a hell of a night in Columbia. And by the way, if you're an OU fan and you have not made the trip to Columbia yet, those burgers at Booch's, they hit the spot. But I want to point out, so the first SEC road trip is Auburn, September 28th. If you haven't thought about it, if you're trying to figure out which one to go to, and you're thinking, I don't know if I want to do the Auburn one, the Ole Miss, or the LSU, think about the Auburn one, because Auburn fans, really nice as long as you're not an Alabama fan. They love visiting fans. They treat them very well. And the atmosphere in Jordan-Hare, I don't know how good Auburn's going to be. We'll see. I think they're going to be better than they were. But there are days in Jordan-Hare where the 85 Bears could come in and won't win, because those people just go berserk. So if you want to get a taste of what just a crazy SEC atmosphere is, the first one out of the gate might be the one.
I want to see the eagle fly around.
Yeah,
it's
that
awesome.
Sounds awesome. Like that's good. I love live animals too. So that's again LSU going and seeing the tiger. It's going to be awesome.
It's exciting.
Yeah,
anyway, it's exciting, but at the same time, Andy, I think that like you look at that back end of the schedule, and we were talking about this on the YouTube show maybe last week, George. It can be terrifying when you look at the way that Oklahoma ends the season. And really, I mean, I don't think Tennessee's going to be a cakewalk. I don't think Auburn's going to be a cakewalk. South Carolina even come into town with Shane Beamer and everything that they're trying to kind of get the ship righted back. So it's an extremely tough schedule, but I think one that Oklahoma fans have been, I think, really kind of yearning for a long time before.
Yeah. It's going to be so different than what they're used to. And, you know, I've seen this and there are fans in Georgia and Florida that feel the same way as OU and Texas fans do, where they play this big neutral site game, but it does tend to make the home schedule kind of boring, or did tend to make the home schedule kind of boring with divisional play in the SEC. So like Georgia and Florida fans are pumped at all the new blood they get to see. I'm sure Texas fans are feeling the same way about their home schedule now. OU fans, same thing. But you're right. None of it's easy. Like South Carolina is a good example. They come October 19th. So get them right after the Texas game, right before a road game at Ole Miss. It's a terrible sandwich game situation. South Carolina signed 3 5-star recruits in the last 2 years, guys. Like, they recruit well. Like, there's talent.
Absolutely. And I think that that's why when you play these, games that I think Oklahoma will probably be favored in, it's a lot like Big 12 and basketball right now.
Oh, yeah.
You got to be able to take advantage of your home schedule. And the home schedule for Oklahoma, George, I know that you've wrote about this. I think you're talking about maybe one of the quote-unquote best home schedules in Norman. They had the Ohio State game back in 2016. But, outside of like those marquee matchups that you have every once in a while, I think that the Oklahoma fan base and certainly the merchants around here are starved for what is going and should be an exceptional home schedule in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to early 2000s when you had A&M, who was rolling back then. They would come into town. You had Kansas State, who obviously under Bill Snyder was doing really well. We had the year where, Alabama came to town. That's what you're looking at, because it's the old Big 12, right? That's when they were really, really good. The conference was the best in the country in a lot of regards. I think you look at it too. They sold out their season tickets within a month or two.
Yeah.
And they already announced that a few months ago, which I can't remember the last time that happened. I mean, even the last few years, they've been going up till kickoff saying, hey, we still have tickets available. And they've kept that sellout streak alive. I don't know exactly how they kept it alive a few times, but that's not going to be an issue.
Probably ended up buying a bunch of the extra tickets and giving them out to everybody around town.
Exactly. But that's no longer an issue when you talk about the Alabamas of the world coming to town, or even Tennessee and all of those big opponents.
Yeah, it is going to be so much fun. I imagine Oklahoma fans just counting down the days until this season starts, because, I mean, really, this started in 2021 in July with the news that they were going. Think about it. You're talking about a 3-year gap before you actually get to see it come to fruition, with the Tennessee Vols showing up in Norman for a conference game.
Which, on top of, even if it was just Tennessee, that would be a story in and of itself. And, I think that they had them here not too long ago.
Yeah, they did.
Josh Heupel's going to be on the other sideline, and just kind of the animosity between Oklahoma and Josh, and just that whole situation, which was really fascinating to kind of see from afar at SEC Media Day this past summer. It's going to be, I think, hopefully everybody to a certain extent respects what that is and the relationship with Josh. And I think how that bridge, it might have been looked at as maybe burned over the last couple of years, but I think that there is some movement to maybe get that thing at least seemingly talked about, because the memory of what Josh Heupel is to people in Norman, is incredibly important, and certainly the start of Bob's era and everything that came with that.
Well, I don't blame Josh for feeling the way he feels because of the way that ended. I mean, 100%. they were rolling offensively, and then they bogged down. I think Bob had to make the move. I don't think you can argue that it was the right move at the time, but I understand why that would piss Josh off. So, but I hope they can patch it up, because not because I think that Josh needs to be the Oklahoma coach someday. I think Josh is doing a great job just sort of planting his own flag, but like, he should be a beloved former player, which he is, but should feel that love as well and not feel bitter about the whole place.
And I think a lot of that animosity has gone away. I know, talking to some people just this last year in the administration, that I think that they plan to celebrate him in some fashion, and honor him during the game.
That'd be great.
And I think he'll get a standing ovation. I really do.
100%.
I mean, I think the fan base has somewhat moved on from that whole ordeal, because, I mean, there was a lot of fans that wanted Josh Heupel fired. My dad wanted them, but I remember him talking about that. But, I think that you look back and what he meant to the university, like you said, Eddie, winning a national title, which, Oklahoma hasn't won one since. Feeling like he was robbed of the Heisman Trophy that year as well. I think that OU fans still love Josh Heupel, and they've moved on, and really ended up working out for everybody
I think in all heart of hearts, Josh would probably tell you, whether he wants to admit it or not, moving on from Oklahoma, it was a little bit like what Brent had to do when he went to Clemson, ironically, that you had to reinvent yourself a little bit. You look in the mirror, you make the changes that you need to make, and obviously what he's been able to do at Central Florida and now Tennessee, I think, the rest is kind of history. And if he needs a reminder, I'm sure that I don't know what bank he uses in Knoxville, but I'm sure when he logs into his bank account and he looks at it, he's doing just fine.
And let's not forget,
he's feeling all right.
Yeah. Let's not forget too, OU went on to hire, arguably the best offensive mind in college football in Lincoln Riley. And I get
now
it.
You're trying to get us canceled.
Yeah. I mean, OU fans.
You can't say nice. Wait, okay. I need to ask you guys this, because I'm curious. When does the statute of limitations end on Lincoln? Like, when are you guys allowed to say something nice about him? Like, hey, he coached some Heisman Trophy winners at Oklahoma. That was cool.
I've said nice things about him since his departure. I don't think the fan base, sure, as much as they've moved on from Josh Heupel, I'm not sure they'll ever move on from the Lincoln Riley situation.
Yeah, I think that's something that might end up going into perpetuity. There is no end in sight for the displeasure and anger that comes when Lincoln Riley's name comes up.
They relish every USC loss. It is.
If you think that people hate watching sports, just get around a television at a bar in Oklahoma City at about 9:30 on a Saturday night when USC's playing.
Well, guys, you've already got me pumped up for September. Like, I don't know how I'm going to make it till September. We only have one football game left between then and now, but I am so excited, and thank you so much. We will be in touch, and I need to come visit y'all in spring practice. There's
awesome.
It's a lot of excitement. All right, George Stoia III, Eddie Radosevich from Sooner Scoop. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples On 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On 3 Sports YouTube channel.